An apology and a verbal commitment isn't enough.
You're listening to Healing Broken Trust podcast with Brad and Morgan Robinson. This is a podcast where we talk about healing from affairs, infidelity, trust, and cheating in your relationship. So if you're wanting to heal your marriage after any of these things, this is the podcast for you. And in episode 8, we're talking about how do you cut off the affair partner. So it's really important, obviously, to cut off the affair partner. But one thing we want to remind you is we have free resources to help you through this process. If you go to healingbrokentrust.com/episode 8, that's episode the number 8, you can download our free resources there to help you through this process. So if you're in this position where you're struggling to cut off the affair partner, you might want to go back to episode 4, where we talk about how to fall out of love with the affair partner. That's really important. Episode 2 is also a really good one, where we talk about limerence as well. So go back to those. Those can really help you if you are struggling to kind of cut off the affair. So that's really important. But with that, let's get started. Today, we're talking about how to end an affair. It seems clear to many of us that we can't have an affair partner in our marriage relationship, in a relationship, but why is it that you can't gloss over this important step of cutting off the affair, Brad?
Well, there's several reasons why. Some of them are quite obvious, but many times when people do have an affair, they think an apology is enough. They think that, I've apologized, I've made a verbal commitment, that should be good enough. Yeah, and it's really not. And there's several reasons why an apology and a verbal commitment isn't enough. A verbal commitment to your spouse isn't enough. Part of that is because your spouse is terrified that this is going to happen again. I hear constantly from everybody who's been betrayed, they always say, how do I know this won't happen again? And if you don't cut this person out of your life in the right way, you're not creating safety for your marriage to go on, for your marriage to heal. And so, there's several different reasons why it's important to cut off the affair partner. I'm just going to go through a couple of them. I think the first is it sends the wrong message to your spouse and the affair partner. We're still, he never told me it was over, or she never told me it was over. So, are they just busy right now, or are they think, or
I guess I can just check up with them.
I'll check up with them later. Yeah. Maybe they're just busy because we didn't talk every day anyway. So they're going to contact you again later.
And that's the affair partner.
Yeah, that's the affair partner thinking that. You don't send. Then it sends a message to your spouse. I'm not really serious about rebuilding this. I'm not really serious about building this back. And that's
1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous place to be. So, like I said earlier, ending the affair, it's vital to creating safety for the injured spouse, the betrayed spouse. They need to know this won't happen again, and that's a big step towards creating that safety. Also, ending the affair is vital to ending your own ambiguity about if you want to stay or not. Many people I've worked with who have still had contact with the affair partner, whether they worked with them or didn't work with them, but had contact with them, they stayed in that period of ambiguity we discussed, where they were kind of, I don't know if I want to be here, if I want to be out. And so what happened is they really guilt developed and a lot of shame developed. And then they felt like, well, you don't deserve me, I'm not a good person. And that's because they've still kept this relationship up, whether the affair was going on or not. They still had some relationship with the affair partner. And they felt guilty about that, and they wanted to end their marriage because they felt guilty about it themselves. And so they had this overwhelming guilt. I'm not a good person. You don't deserve me. I'm not good enough for you. And that's the betrayer saying this. And sometimes that comes from them having an ongoing relationship with the affair partner. Maybe it's morphed into a friendship, and even that is not healthy. And so that keeps them, as time goes on, just feeling like I'm not good enough. I can't do this. You don't deserve me. And that's really because in part they haven't ended the affair.
Yeah, and they're saying, you don't deserve me. You don't deserve what I'm doing to you. It's not so much you don't deserve me.
No, it's not like that at all. Yeah, it's like it's really coming from a place of shame. I'm a bad person.
And I've done so many bad things to you. I've hurt you.
Yeah. Even in their spouse is saying, I forgive you. I want to be with you. It comes from that.
Yeah.
And that happens. And then the other is, obviously, you can't rebuild trust. I still see you with this person. I still see them emailing you stuff related to work or this or that. And some of you listening to this are just probably flabbergasted, thinking, "Oh my gosh, this happens." Some people, they try to minimize the affair, and so
because they'd rather it disappear than actually handle it or deal with it.
Yeah, actually handle it or deal with it. And so there's things like that. There are things like that happen that have to be clearly dealt with, and we're going to get into that in a second. But you have to cut off the affair so that you as a couple, you and your spouse, can move forward in the healing process, rebuild your relationship. And here's the kicker. The involved spouse must cut off all intimate relations with the affair partner. And occasionally people work with the affair partner and they find themselves, you work with this person or so you have to, and in situations like that where you work with them,
it's hard to get away.
It's hard to get away. But here's one of the things too, though, is if that's the situation you're in, you must keep everything. You must not discuss anything personal with them, right. And you must
do everything you can to get away from them if you possibly can.
Yeah, I would recommend that. Everything. But you gotta keep it business if that's it, and you need to let your spouse know kind of what's going on. They're going to be asking you probably, but you need to let them know. And so, with that, Morgan, let's get into these.
The rules for separating from the affair partner.
Yeah.
Right? How to do it, basically.
Yeah.
You want to start with the first one?
Yeah. This is the first is allow the betrayed spouse to participate in the severance. And here's why that's important. Allowing the betrayed spouse to have a say in how it is done will help that person find closure as well. Also, because the affair involved secrecy, this moment of truth is refreshing. It's important to remember and reinforce that couples are a team. Yeah. Here's the kicker with this, though, is I have seen people, they come into my office and say, I ended the affair, but their spouse didn't participate in the severance. Right. They have no idea.
Right.
And this person may have, and here's the thing, when you're in an affair, you're lying, you're being dishonest about what's happening, what's going on, and your spouse doesn't know what to believe.
Right.
And so anything that you say or do, if you say anything like, "Oh, I did it already," or I told her this or that, or told him this or that, they don't know.
There's no way.
So
knowing.
And the idea with this is one of the things is it creates safety. So you really need to let them participate in this. That doesn't mean that they need to write the email for you. That doesn't mean they need to do it for you. That just means if you're going to do it over the phone, you need to do it yourself. Call them over the phone and use your own words and talk to them. Your spouse doesn't need to say, "Oh, John says it's over, so quit calling him."
Right.
That's not going to work. That doesn't create any safety for them, and it doesn't send the clear message to the affair partner that it's over.
Right.
And so you have to do it.
They just might be on the other line, maybe listening in.
Yeah.
Or standing there, or they might say, "Well, you really need to tell them it like this instead of like that, because to me this sounds more like you're cutting it off versus I'm doing it for the kids or whatever."
Yeah, exactly. The second one is make it a clear, absolute severance. And so, as you as the person who had the affair, there are plenty of ways, or a number of ways to separate from the affair partner. And when you do this, you should not leave any glimmer of hope that you are still open to an affair. You have to show them, look, I'm not interested in you. I love my spouse. I want to be with my spouse. I'm doing this because I want to be there.
And what we were doing is wrong, and I will not be doing it ever again.
Yeah.
With you or anyone else.
Yeah. And so you have to have this certainty. I am certain about this, and that's expressed through tone of voice, body language, and your word choice, the choice of words that you use.
Do not call me ever again.
I am done. Do not call me again. I love my wife. I love my husband. And so it has to be with clear severance. And here's why this is so important. Why you have to make this clear. Why it has to come from the person who had the affair is many times as affairs grow and mature, these things can last not just months, but sometimes a couple of years, sometimes even longer than that. And people feel like they're genuinely in love with this other person. And you may be done, but that other person isn't done yet. And
the betrayer, like
the affair partner,
Mm-hmm.
they're not done yet. And so you have to let them know, look, we are done. There's no us anymore. There's no future. All the things that we talked about, us leaving our spouses to be with each other, that's not going to happen anymore. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be with you. You have to get to that level, not necessarily being cruel. You want to be short of being cruel, but you want to be forceful. You want to let them know that you're certain about you being done.
And that leads us to the third one. Do not be cordial or kind when severing the relationship. This should not be a friendly conversation. You don't want to be cruel, but we believe the colder and more absolute, the better. In fact, it's cruel to the affair partner if there's even a glimmer of hope that this will ever happen again. So more importantly, it's crucial, obviously more importantly, it's crucial to the betrayed spouse, your spouse, so they're not led to believe that unfaithfulness will occur at any point in the future. So you don't want to be like, well, I don't want to hurt your feelings, and I don't want you to feel bad, so, good luck to you. No, I'm sorry, this does not ever happen again, right?
Yeah.
So don't call me.
Yeah. And it needs to be very, very black and white. I'm done. It's to the point. You're not kind. You're not friendly when you do this. And you're not, if you have to work with a person, maybe you're professional, but you're not kind and friendly. You're not sitting around the water cooler anymore. You're not going on lunch breaks, obviously.
Right, you're changing habits, changing patterns too.
Yeah. You're not sending any mixed signals. Sometimes people, when just being kind, sometimes that can be interpreted as being flirty or that you have an interest. And so you have to be really, really careful. You're not just being kind. That can send the message, I'm still open to you. That can send the message of being flirty, that kind of thing. I'm interested. You can't do that.
Right.
Now, when you end this, the fourth part of this is when you do this, you're doing it for love. It's important not to tell the affair partner the relationship is ending. Our affair is ending for the kids because of my kids, or because I want them to grow up with mom and dad together, or because of a commitment you made, or out of duty to the family, things like that. Instead, it needs to be because you're emphasizing the love you feel for your spouse.
Right. So definitely it's about you and your spouse, that you love your spouse, you want to reconnect with your spouse, and that there's no room at all for them in any of that. It's not because they're making me or anything like that.
And, and also just, also you could emphasize that this was a complete and total mistake.
Right.
Also using specific language such as never contact me again, I do not want to talk to you, or I do not want any sort of intimate relationship with you ever again. Things like that, phrases like that. You never contact me again. I don't want to talk to you again. I don't want any sort of intimate relationship or contact. Things like that. It sends a clear message that I am done.
And repeat yourself. You have to stand your ground. Sometimes, they might try to remind you of what, this or that, send you a text or something. You've got to hold your ground there, and you've got to include your spouse. So if they ever did contact you again, maybe next week or next month, next year, whatever, you're completely open and honest. We've talked about that, being very honest and forthright.
Yeah, and Morgan, you're right. I would say, I don't know what the exact percentages are, but I would say there is a good chance that the affair partner is going to contact you again after you try this, and it's more testing, because for them this was, an affair as well. This was, or a relationship as well, and maybe they loved you, and so there's a good chance that they're going to try to contact you again. If that happens, you have to let your spouse know about it, because what will happen is your spouse is probably going to find out, and if you don't tell them, you're going to be in deeper water, and the walls are going to go up. It's going to be harder to rebuild this. It's going to be less trust. Transparency and honesty are the best, especially with this.
So it's like doing the opposite of what you're doing in the secrecy of the
Oh,
affair.
yeah. That's a great way to look at it. You're really doing the opposite of how you were in the affair. In the affair, you were very secretive. You were very conniving. You were very dishonest. There was no transparency. Now that you're in the rebuilding phase, you have to be transparent. You have to shine light in the darkness. You have to be honest. You have to expose these secrets. That rebuilds this. Now, part of this, though, is this other person needs to get it in no uncertain terms. You are done, and it has to come from a place of, I love my wife. I am with this person. I love my husband. I am choosing to be with him. You were a mistake. And that's where it needs to come from. And here's the other thing. I want to emphasize this, is at some point there is a good chance that the affair partner is going to try to make contact again. Be transparent. Be honest. It may cause a ripple effect just because your spouse is going to feel like, gosh, this person's really obsessed with my spouse. But either way, they're probably going to find out. And it's going to help rebuild trust because you're bringing that information to them. They're going to see that you're trying, that you're being honest and transparent. And so that's really important.
Yeah, and it's just very important to also realize sometimes that affair partner does seek you out. Sometimes they do have a part to play in this whole affair. And
they do. And let me share a story, Morgan.
Okay.
We had a couple. By the time they came in, maybe it was about 18 months into the affair, and this was somebody who had moved out, separated, moved out, back in, back out several times. When I had worked with them, they had gotten to a place where the affair was ended, the marriage was being rebuilt. They were both felt like they were really moving better, and the husband worked with her, but I was able to only see her briefly, and he was able to he had a job where he could do certain things and kind of work out of the office. And one day he
out of the office, like
he was
the
able
home
to.
office?
Yeah, he was able to work from home.
Okay.
And not what I meant to say is he wasn't always in the office, so he was able to work from home. He was doing that, and one day he had to go into the office, and he saw this woman and just kind of made eye contact with her, just saw her, and then he's back into it again. And then because they spent 18 months of trying to get to this place of ending it, and just seeing her one time caused him to
flip a switch and go back. Oh,
and and we talked about limerence before, and I'll just briefly describe it this way. Limerence is, it's kind of romantic love, but more of an addiction to a person, where they're like an object and it's an obsession. And that's kind of how he felt about this woman. And he was trying to end it. Did really well. The marriage was moving forward. They were growing together. Trust was being rebuilt. He encounters this, and then they're back into that whole cat and mouse game again. And it's really devastating. So you have to take this seriously.
Yeah.
You don't know where, you think you might be, you think you're strong enough to do this, but you're probably not really strong. You weren't strong enough to keep an affair from happening the first time. I know right now this is an emotional place for you. There's a lot of guilt as the betrayer, but you got to really take this seriously. You can't minimize this, and you've got to be very, very careful, and you can't underestimate just where that other person's at. So you have to take this seriously, that I've got to end this. I got to have clear boundaries. I've got to know in certain terms, let them know from my heart that I want to be with my spouse because I love them, and I do not want to be with you. You were a mistake.
And it's kind of like going back just a tad bit about limerence. It's like an addiction, very much like an alcoholic. You can't just have one beer. It's all of a sudden that takes you back to your addiction. So it's very important to realize that some may be, you may have to just cut it off completely. Depends on you. But the fifth one, right? That's what we're on.
Yeah, go ahead, Morgan.
It's don't look back. So basically, don't look back. It's important to make, a clean break. Sympathizing with the affair partner, trying to soften the significance of the conversation, or implying any possibility of a future friendship confuses the affair partner, and it will open the door to more trouble. If your spouse is involved in helping you cut this off, they're going to hear this tone of voice. They're going to hear what you're saying. They're going to hear how you're saying it. They're going to hear
what we're telling you to do.
Right.
And so they're going to hold you to it.
Right. And that's good, because it's helpful. It's going to help you. It's going to help your relationship. It's going to really ultimately do what's best for you in the future. And it's natural for a previously involved spouse to want to check up on the affair partner. But it's important to resist the temptation, because a lot of times these relationships, they weren't just fly by night. I mean, these are things that happen over a long period of time sometimes, and so sometimes you want to check up on that person.
Yeah, everybody's curious. You're curious about people that you dated in the past and things like that. But here's the kicker: you had an affair with this person. You had an affair with this person. This is, if you're listening to this and you're working through this, you know how this can destroy your marriage very, very quickly. Don't look back. Block this person on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, other social media. Get this person completely out of your life. It's not worth it. And it's you don't know what it can do to that person again, but it's hurting your spouse as well. You don't know if it's going to trigger something in you where you want to go be with that person again. But it's also not helping rebuild trust for your spouse. The next principle is there should be complete openness and honesty. From now on, there should be no more secrecy between the two spouses, between you and your spouse. As the betrayer, you must decide to volunteer any communication that may happen between you and your affair partner before being asked to do so.
Oh, that's key.
Includes, that's really important. That includes text messages, face-to-face interaction, emails, or anything else. It is important to avoid any communication with the affair partner But if or when communication inevitably happens, the betrayer must be quick to share it with his or her spouse. Do not underestimate how helpful this will be. If you do this, this will quickly help you guys rebuild things. And so don't underestimate how helpful that can be.
Yeah, definitely. Just being completely open and honest, man, it goes so far.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely volunteer that information before you're asked. But what about the next one, right? We talk about maintaining a safe place. Brad, what is that? How do you maintain a safe place?
Well, this is where the hurting spouse, the spouse who's been betrayed, enters the process. It is very important for betrayed spouses to create an environment that encourages complete honesty. This means that when the spouse comes to them and tells them about communication with the affair partner, it is crucial to maintain composure.
Yes.
So as a spouse who's been betrayed, you have to help them feel safe to talk about this, because most betrayers don't want to talk about this because they feel like they already feel guilty enough, and they don't want to make you hurt anymore.
Right.
And so if you are overreacting, if you may be reacting, but your spouse will feel like you're overreacting, this is hurting you, I don't see the point of answering these questions, it's just making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
You have to help them feel safe, in a sense, to be able to talk to you.
So that when or if they do get communication from that affair partner, that they know that if they're going to come to you, that you're going to not blow up, you're going to receive it with grace, and just I mean, you may not feel comfortable, but thanking them. Hey, thanks for being open. Thanks for being honest. I appreciate you coming and telling me this. It makes me feel a lot more secure. It makes me feel like we're really going to make it.
Yeah.
And you really can make it, and you really will if you are open and honest and cut that person off. And however they ended up, with that story you just told about the guy who went back to work after working from home, and just one look at that person kind of like sent them back to their addiction. I mean, if he were to have just turned around, maybe even got out of there, as soon as he could, and went home to his wife and said, hey, I accidentally looked at her. We were in the hallway. This happened. And your spouse can be that source of healing and can be a safe place.
And one of the things with this is those kinds of things grow because they're secret.
Right.
It just adds fuel to the fire. But one of the things to realize is this is a necessary step that has to be done. You have to cut off this person, and the betrayer has to do it. It's best if the betrayed spouse is a part of this process. They're able to listen in, and it's best if you say, I'm doing it out of love. You're not being kind or cordial.
Right.
You're being short of being cruel. You're letting them know you were a mistake. I love my wife. I love my husband. I'm going to be with them. You were a mistake. I don't want to talk to you again.
Right. What we did was wrong.
Yeah, and you're done. There's no need to reminisce about the past, say we had good times, things like that. You're not doing yourself any favors. In fact, what you're doing is you're leaving the door open.
Right.
That you're open.
And what we're really doing here, what we need to do is we need to break the pattern of secrecy and lies. We take a giant step in the direction of healing and turn towards your spouse, because they're really going to help you. And if you are the betrayed spouse, you got to help your spouse feel comfortable. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. But it's definitely, when your spouse is coming and turning and doing the opposite and being honest with you, it's really a step in the right direction, and healing will come, and the pain will subside over time. What you say?
Yeah, it'll get better. Thanks for listening to Healing Broken Trust. If you like this episode, you can always get our show notes and more details and links to the resources we discussed at healingbrokentrust.com. Also, as long as you're online, head on over to healingbrokentrust.com/retreat for details on an upcoming one-on-one retreat with me. If you like us, please subscribe and leave a review for us on iTunes. As always, everything discussed on this podcast is either my opinion or Morgan's opinion and is not to be taken as relationship advice, because I'm not your therapist, nor have I considered your personal situation as your therapist. This podcast is for your entertainment and education only, and I really do hope you've enjoyed it. See you until next time.